National Rally. Their participation was announced today by rally organisers. Kerry Brewster reports the event is expected to attract more than 50,000 fans to the two-day meeting.
The 1983 rally on the 13th and 14th of August is shaping up to be a spectacular event. This is how last year's looked, long and demanding. This time, more than 80 competitors will drive the 500 kilometres on closed forest roads behind Gosford. And for the first time, 3 commercial television channels have combined to sponsor the event. With a number of international stars heading over, our own champions face strong competition. Seasoned rally drivers Jeff Portman, Greg Carr and Colin Bond will be joined by the current touring car ace and newcomer to rallies, Dick Johnson.
Now, Dick hasn't been in a rally before, so can you give him some sort of idea as to what it's going to be like out there?
Well, he's been saying about the Falcon hasn't been handling all that well lately, so he'll be used to correcting and catching the slides. But I think basically, Dick's an excellent driver and he's got tons of ability, so all he's got to do is jump in the car and go as fast as he can and hang on.
Specially fitted out cars are ready and waiting, and on August the 13th, Minister Mike Cleary will drop the flag on the Gosford waterfront. Kerry Brewster, Eyewitness News.
The war of words between Queensland's Dick Johnson and Colin Bond is continuing following that crash during the Amaroo car races last Sunday. The two will line up against each other again this weekend in the Gosford 2GO Rally, and both drivers will be among the leading contenders in Australia's premier rallying event.
Dick Johnson got a taste of the dirt track a week early in this crash at Amaroo Park, and he's made no secret of the fact he believes Colin Bond was to blame. However, at today's practice for this weekend's Gosford 2GO Rally, Bond was adamant that neither he nor anyone else was to blame for the crash.
I know Dick was upset, and fair enough, when a car gets rolled over, everyone gets upset. But, I was, as far as I'm concerned, completely innocent of the, what caused it. And, there's no guilt at all, because it was just one of those things.
Bond and Johnson are part of the top line field for the 2GO Rally, which boasts the big names in Australian rallying, Portman, Carr and Dunkerton, plus England's best, Malcolm Wilson, who thrilled the crowd this morning in his BDA Escort.
I had a very bad accident back in 1980 on the Scottish Rally. I actually broke both ankles, and one of them had to be pinned and put me out of rallying for about 3 or 4 months.
And what have you managed to achieve since then?
Not a lot, really. But I got a full work sport contract this year to drive the new car, which was due to come out in April. And unfortunately, the whole project was cancelled, so I've had quite a lean year this year, really.
Once car rallying could be considered a man in the street sport, not anymore. At a tyre every 30 kilometres and cars that burn a litre of fuel every 4 kilometres. That's the type of expense involved if you want to stay competitive, like the big names taking part in this weekend's Dunlop 2GO International Car Rally near Gosford. It was practice day near Wyong over the sprint circuit, but there was no holding back from these drivers who seemed to have lead weights in their right feet. Rally drivers and those students of the sport will tell you being fast isn't everything. Just as important is reliability and an understanding navigator, prepared to shoulder the blame no matter who's at fault.
Who gets the blame?
Navigator, of course.
Always?
Always.
The driver is always correct?
Absolutely.
Is that a standing rule before they even get in the seat?
Well, it's an unwritten rule in my car.
Greg Carr, Colin Bond and Ross Dunkerton are among the rally's big-name competitors, driving cars more than 3 times their off-the-floor value. British rally champion Malcolm Wilson impressed on his first outing in a little Ford Escort that's anything but a little old lady's car. Then there's the 2 Japanese teams. Short on the leg they might be, but heavy on the foot they definitely are. Imagine the goings-on if they get lost in the thick rainforests. Translated, watch out for the tree. And who said there's no room for a backseat driver?
That's the only place I'd be with those fellows, Endo.
Are you sure that's what he said?
That's the story.
British driver Malcolm Wilson and Gosford privateer Ian Hill are disputing the lead after a day of hair-raising driving in the Dunlop 2GO Car Rally on the Central Coast. Australian rally champion Jeff Portman, driving a Bluebird, led the 80-car field away from Wyong this morning, but Wilson, known as Mad Mal, soon had the lead in his escort as the cars barrelled through Arimba State Forest on the first stage. The local driver Ian Hill, also in an escort, was 23rd away at the start, but quickly moved through the field into second place as the cars came to the special speedway section at Jillaby. On the dirt circuit, he was by far the fastest, beating even the V8-powered TR7 driven by Colin Bond. From Jillaby, it was off into the rugged Wattagan Mountains, and Hill grabbed the lead when Wilson lost time with a flat tyre. Touring car ace Dick Johnson lucked out on the same section with a broken axle. Wayne Bell crashed out of the event in his Toyota T18, and Colin Bond lost time taking a wrong turn but recovered to 5th place. Wilson then staged the most dramatic performance of the day. A quick wheel change saw him back in the fray, and at speeds of up to 200 kilometres per hour, he overhauled Hill to hit the front again. Wayne Portman is holding down 3rd place in the Bluebird, followed by Greg Carr in a Fiat. That's the way the placings stand, with drivers now at a rest stop, preparing for the tough night stage of the Gosford Rally. Well, local driver Ian Hill has won the 1983 Dunlop 2GO Rally by a margin of 22 seconds in a thrilling finish this afternoon. Hill finished ahead of Murray Coote and David Office after the star-studded field became badly depleted in the final stages of the rally.
Well, this is one car that didn't get moving this morning, Bob Morris's Alpha. It was one of last night's casualties, burnt out in its first ever rally outing. Meantime, when the rest of the field set out, the rally looks set to be a Malcolm Wilson benefit. The British champion led by 2 minutes. However, in the very first stage this morning, he lost a wheel, and that was the end of the race for him. The lead then fell to local privateer Ian Hill, who for the second year running drove brilliantly through the mountain, and he too looks set for a comfortable win from the second place Greg Carr and then Colin Bond. However, the race was certainly developing into the survival of the fittest, and Bond's V8 Triumph ended up with a gearbox full of neutrals, and he too dropped out. Then there were further complications when Greg Carr hit the lead in his Fiat after Ian Hill developed a differential problem. But Carr's luck didn't hold up. On the second last leg of the race, his gearbox went. That left Ian Hill to limp home to victory, a mere 22 seconds ahead of Queensland's Murray Coote, who wasn't able to make up the ground quick enough.
Murray's been catching us all over the last 3 stages, but in the end, we've only beaten him by 20 seconds after about 400 kilometres.
Motor racing and local driver Ian Hill overcame mechanical difficulties to beat the world's best in the 2GO Dunlop Rally on the Central Coast. The 400-kilometre event finished today, but not before it claimed numerous victims.
It was the final stage through the Wattagan Forest that took its toll on several of the top drivers. Twice British champion and pre-race favourite Malcolm Wilson held a handy lead until he snapped a back axle and was forced to retire from the race. Then Ian Hill assumed control, but he too suffered rear axle problems in his Ford Escort, but was able to carry on and win by over 22 seconds. With a high attrition rate, Queenslander Murray Coote, driving a Datsun, came from nowhere to finish second, while Victorian champion David Officer piloted his Galant into 3rd spot. Other drivers to be forced out were Greg Carr in his Fiat with gearbox problems and Colin Bond in his Triumph TRX. Graham McNeese, Eyewitness Sport.
80 crews, including most of Australia's top rally drivers and 3 internationals, will contest the Dunlop 2GO International Rally at the weekend. The rally, now rated one of the top events in Australia, will be run mainly in daylight over 23 special stages, each one timed to the second. Some of the top crews gave their cars a shakedown at Jillaby today. Jim Sullivan was there.
The list of starters in the Dunlop 2GO International is quite literally a who's who of Australian rallying. Drivers and sponsors attracted to the European-style event, which gives large numbers of spectators a chance to see cars in action. Most of the special stages are in the easily accessible Wattagan range. During the rally, cars will also be timed around the dirt sprint circuit at Jillaby, and there was a chance for some practice there today. Col Bond in his V8-engined TR7 is definitely one of the drivers to beat. And as far as Col's concerned, there's only one way to drive this rally.
This way, the only way to drive it, and drive every section and every bit of the road, bit by bit, and I just sort of, if I'm on a straight, I try and make sure I go down the straight as fast as I can, and then when I get to the corner, you brake as late as you possibly can, and you look for tenths of seconds all the time, and at the end of the night, they all add up, and hopefully you're in the front.
One of Colin Bond's circuit racing sparring partners, Dick Johnson, is having his first rally drive this weekend in an Escort.
This is the first time today, it was the first time I've ever really driven on dirt, and the first time I've ever driven a rally car.
You looking forward to it?
I'm looking forward to it very, very much indeed.
One driver who certainly needs no rally practice is twice British rally champion Malcolm Wilson. But Wilson says local drivers will have an advantage.
You can't expect to come over here and beat, locals really who have a fair idea of the landlines. It's always a very difficult thing to do, especially on a blind event. But I mean, got a good car. Very good car, so it's fingers crossed, really.
Spectacular members of the British rally fraternity, Malcolm Wilson is the leader at the end of Division 1 of the Dunlop 2GO International Rally on the Central Coast. Wilson looked good from the time he started Division 1, which would take in the Ourimbah State Forest, Gillaby Autocross and the Wattigans. 80 competitors entered the two-day event, which began at 10:30 this morning from the Gosford waterfront. Wilson's Escort BDA set a cracking pace. Jeff Portman in car 1, last year's winner of this rally, seen here in a Datsun, quickly slotted himself into second place. Car number 6, Wayne Bell, in a Toyota T18, was also going well in the early stages, holding down third spot. The reliable campaigner Colin Bond in his Triumph TR8, number 4, was next in fourth place. The conditions for rally driving were described as perfect, with last night's rain having settled the dust and made the roads fast. And being the third round of the Australian Rally Championships, every driver and navigator were putting everything into it. No exception was car number 5, the Japanese team in Mitsubishi, who were expected to do well, but didn't seem to be able to hold back the front runners. Car number 11, an Escort driven by racetrack favourite Dick Johnson, was no doubt unaware of what was about to happen to him seconds from now. A broken axle, and he was out. Others kept belting away, but Johnson wasn't the only one who lost out today. Several rolled their cars, others also had mechanical failures. But at the end of Division 1 of the rally, it was still Briton Malcolm Wilson showing the way and doing it quite easily. Next was Jeff Portman, 2 minutes behind. In third spot was Greg Carr, who'd obviously made up time in the latter stages of the division. He was followed by Colin Bond, still in fourth place in his Triumph. The rally got underway again about half an hour ago for the night section in the Wattigans. It's due to finish at 8:30 tonight, and then the remaining competitors will be at it again from 8:30 in the morning for more of the Wattigans and Gillaby.
Hill nursed his ailing Escort over the line this afternoon to win the Dunlop 2GO International Rally held on the Central Coast this weekend. Hill had a mere 22-second margin over second-placed Murray Coote in a Datsun. David Officer in a Galant took third place, another 28 seconds away. Overnight mechanical problems took their toll on the leaders. Briton Malcolm Wilson broke an axle in his Escort.
Drivers took part in the third round of the Australian Rally Championships. More than half the cars, including 11 of the top 12 starters, failed to finish. Charles Stewart and a Today crew covered part of the rally for this report on one team's bid for victory.
200 crest into very fast left, tight.
I'm looking for potholes, I'm looking for crests, I'm looking for rocks. Principally, I'm looking at the tree line so that I can interpret which direction the road is actually going to take.
You've got to have your head buried in your notes and maps and things, and you have to be aware of all the things that are going on around you.
Ron Marks has been rallying for about 8 years after switching from race cars. He's now driving a factory-prepared Renault 5 Turbo, a blindingly fast little machine rarely seen in Australia. His navigator is one of Australia's most respected, Monty Safern, a man with years of experience. Together they're about to take on a crack field in one of Australia's most important rally events, the Dunlop 2GO International on the New South Wales Central Coast.
This event's very important actually. It's now the third round of the Australian Rally Championship, and the first and the second round have each been won by a different driver. So winning this for our car would put us on an equal footing more or less with those two guys.
Under cloudy skies and with occasional showers, the competitors have started from Gosford. Ahead lies 300 kilometres of intense competition over 2 days. It's a star-studded field with 5 Australian rally champions, 3 Bathurst winners and 3 internationals starting. In spite of the formidable opposition and his 23rd starting position, Ron Marks is confident.
Absolutely, otherwise we wouldn't be here.
From the start, it's obvious that this is going to be one of the fastest rallies ever seen in Australia. English driver Malcolm Wilson sets a blistering pace, quickly taking the lead and stretching it out to 2 or 3 minutes. Over one section, cars are clocked at 220 kilometres an hour over the slippery dirt roads.
You've got to have a lot of faith in the man sitting next to you, that's for sure. That's starting to get a bit scary at 170 or 180k, but I don't get frightened.
Rallying is a very unpredictable sport. You can never be sure what lies over the next crest or around the next corner. Things can go wrong and do go wrong. It happened to many drivers like car 50's Steve Annabelle. A moment's indecision, a wrong move, and disaster. They were all right and were able to drive on. Shortly after, we caught a glimpse of our car, and it was our turn to be shocked. Like Annabelle, Ron Marks had had trouble with an embankment and a tree stump that put them on their roof just when they'd been looking good. They'd made up many places and were pushing the top 10.
Well, it's going to make it very difficult now because we've lost time in that section and the car's obviously had some damage under the front suspension as a result, and it's not handling as well as what it was. So, but we're just rectifying that now. And it's early days yet, actually.
You'll be pressing on regardless?
Yes, we certainly will be.
On they pressed to try and make up time. Their position had slipped from 4th outright to the mid-20s, and all their good work undone. Day 2, and the hot pace is continuing. Car 9 is looking good, recording very quick times. They move 5 places in the first stage of the day, and are soon lying in 8th place, ready to take on the top runners. But then, disaster strikes for the second time. The Renault gives up the ghost after breaking front suspension during flat-out running. For Ron Marks and Monty Saffern, it's the end of their effort.
I feel very disappointed, disillusioned, I guess is the right expression. Rallying is a difficult situation in so much as you do need fate to be on your side, and it appears as in this event we ultimately haven't had that.
So there's always the next one, I guess?
It sounds that way, yes.
That's rallying. Of 80 starters, only 34 finish, and the winner was a local boy, Ian Hill, who was ranked 23rd at the start. It's an unpredictable sport.
As Charles says, that's rallying, but that also reminds me of some city drivers I know.
Well, a bumper crowd of over 30,000 spectators turned out last weekend to watch round 3 of the Australian Rally Championship, the 2-day Dunlop 2GO rally at Gosford on the New South Wales Central Coast. It was a thrilling race, the fastest rally ever held in Australia, with the lead changing 4 times over the last division. Amongst competitors, British rally champ Malcolm Wilson, Australian champ Jeff Portman, Japanese champion Masao Kamioka, and other big names like Colin Bond and Bobby Morris. But do you have to be a big name to win? Let's find out.
On an overcast Saturday morning, thousands of spectators packed the Gosford foreshore to witness the start of the 1983 Dunlop 2GO International, round 3 of the Australian Rally Championship. It's the biggest event of the Australian Rally calendar. 80 starters, including 5 Australian Rally champions, 3 Bathurst winners and 3 internationals. 2-time British champion and Ford Works driver Malcolm Wilson is the man to watch. It's his first event in Australia. He's to do battle with top Australians Colin Bond in a very fast V8 Triumph, 4-time national champion and current points leader Ross Dunkerton in a Datsun, Bathurst winner Dick Johnson driving in his first rally, and the current Australian champion and last year's winner of this event, Jeff Portman in a Datsun Bluebird. To get this far, most of the teams have had to put in months and months of preparation and spend thousands and thousands of dollars preparing their cars. But over the next 2 days, they'll find out whether or not their preparations will be rewarded.
100, very fast left.
The rally course is set in State Forest north of Gosford. There are 23 competitive stages over more than 300 kilometres of dirt roads made slippery by heavy rains the day before the event. The opening stages set the tone for the rally. The pace is fast and furious, faster in fact than anyone can ever recall in an Australian event. The man setting the pace is that Englishman, Mad Malcolm Wilson, in a blindingly fast Ford Works Escort. The top drivers are forced to push themselves to the limit just to stay with Wilson. On that first morning, cars are clocked at speeds up to 220 kilometres an hour over one stage through the forest. Wilson continually sets the fastest times, making it appear like a benefit event for him and his crew. Portman is running well, as are Greg Carr in his Fiat Abarth and Colin Bond. The second stage is a special 3-lap section around the Jillaby motocross circuit, and it provides a result that many don't expect. Local driver Ian Hill in car 23 blitzes the field, easily setting the fastest time and moving rapidly into contention behind Wilson. Hill knows the course intimately, and his local knowledge shows as he keeps posting very quick times. The rally's ferocious pace wreaks havoc amongst the field. There are many rollovers, like with Steve Annabelle's car 50. A moment's indecision, a wrong move, and over he goes. Another of the fancied runners, fourth-placed Ron Marks in his Turbo Renault, shows the scars of a rollover. He continued in the event, dropping only a minute, but many places. His service crew had a few anxious moments, though, before the car was raced back into action. Another casualty, this time with mechanical difficulties, Ross Dunkerton. He had fuel problems that made his car stop right in the middle of the stage. At the end of the first day's daylight stages, it's Wilson first by more than 2 minutes.
I mean, I didn't really know what to expect, but then we got to the end of the first stage and we sort of taken 20-odd seconds of everybody, so I thought, oh, well, at least we're right there somehow.
In second place, despite some mechanical problems, is Ian Hill.
I think the car's good enough to win the event. It's really just a matter of whether I drive it properly and whether we get a few breaks along the way, and nothing much too major goes wrong with the car.
Jeff Portman hangs on to third spot and has no illusions about being able to outrace Wilson.
I don't for a minute think they're going to catch the car in front. The Escort's just a little bit too fast at this stage. The man's obviously a very, very professional driver, and he's going far more rapidly than I'm capable of in this car.
The rally continues on into the night with 3 more competitive stages. The front runners maintaining their positions, with only Portman and Carr changing third and fourth spots. There are no major dramas in spite of a few frights over the whereabouts of cars that didn't turn up at checkpoints.
Right, well, he should have been in front of Hodder, who was just in front of you. He's in place and you're in place.
No, Ron Kremen was just in front of Hodder and has been for quite a while. So.
Right, well, Kremen actually had Byrne behind him when they left Wyong, so Byrne's gone...
disappeared somewhere.
Disappeared somewhere. Right.
Successful rally driving isn't just about speed. It's also about endurance. In this event, there's been a very high attrition rate. Yesterday, 80 cars started. This morning, there was only 50 left. And today, there's been an even higher toll, with many of the top drivers dropping out during the day's event. Day 2 and the first stage is over the fastest section of the course. Wilson is the first car to start, but a few kilometres down the track, he breaks a stub axle, loses the front wheel, and the leader is forced to retire despite driving flat out for 15 kilometres on only 3 wheels. He's not the only one with problems. Fourth place, Jeff Portman fails to turn up because of engine trouble. Ninth place, Gordon Levin breaks down halfway through the stage, and Japanese star Hotter quits after rolling his Mitsubishi. In one stage, 4 of the top 15 have dropped out, and local driver Ian Hill continues in the lead with Greg Carr in second and Colin Bond in third.
What the problem is that everyone's just trying so much harder than they normally do because it's a sprint event. The top cars in the country are here, and all you do is go for broke, and if you get to the finish, you'll be in a place. If you sort of sit back and take it too easy, you just won't be there. I mean, you'll be there at the finish, but you won't be in a place. So I think that's the problem with most people. They've just been trying too hard, and they've been having a few more offs and rolls and things than what they may normally have.
Another casualty, Ron Marks, is out with broken suspension, wrecked during another flat-out section. It's a bitter blow for him and his navigator, Monty Safern, and it shows. They battled their way through the field to be in 8th place when it happened, setting some very fast times. At the same time, Bond himself becomes a victim with a broken gearbox. So too does Greg Carr, another broken gearbox. And Bob Morris's car 14 finishes on the back of a truck after being gutted by fire. All the top cars are gone. Portman, Wilson, Carr, Bond, Bell, Dunkerton, Marks and Hotter. Of the top 10 starters, only 1 remains. Japanese driver Kamioka, and he's in 12th spot. Ian Hill still leads in spite of rear drive problems. He clings to that lead over the remaining stages, hotly pursued by car 18, the Datsun 1200 of Murray Coote, and car 24, David Officer's Gallant. And that's how they finish in this amazing event. No one could ever recall a faster rally, or one where there have been so many casualties. Of the 80 starters, only 34 finished.
Well, a victory there against all the odds to the local boy from Gosford, Ian Hill, who finished with a crook differential.
Yeah.
You know what that means?
Yeah, sure, mate.
All I know is you switch them on and they go sometimes. But
put some petrol on the back, don't you?
Obviously a very gruelling rally, and Ian Hill, a privateer, not part of the big combines, he's got up and got the money.
Did well, yeah. It's as well as the fast rally. There was some great countryside. Although I guess the drivers don't get the chance to see that, do they?
No.
Unless you start doing a few tumble turns, of course.
See it at close range.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with some tandem surfing.
Saturday, August 13, on the New South Wales Central Coast. And the cream of Australian and international rally teams are getting ready for the start of the fastest and most challenging rally ever held in this country, the 1983 Dunlop 2GO International. For the next 2 days, these drivers and navigators will be racing against the clock over 300 kilometres of twisting, slippery mountain roads. In just 4 years, the Dunlop 2GO has grown to become Australia's premier rally, and with a list of stars better than any Academy Award presentation, over 30,000 spectators are here to see the action. The rally is also round 3 of the Australian Championship, has drawn entries from right across the country, and for the first time in many years, Australian rally fans will get to see top international drivers from Japan and England. The Dunlop 2GO is based along the lines of European rallies, where most of the action is held in daylight. And the thousands of spectators through the Wattigan Mountains are about to see these crews pit their skills against the elements, driving the fastest and most powerful rally cars ever seen in Australia. Heading the international lineup are 2 of Japan's best, Noriyuki Hotta and current Japanese rally champion Masao Kamioka. Both will drive Mitsubishi Lancers to be navigated by fellow countrymen Ken Sakuma and Shuji Inada. But the real star is twice British rally champion Mad Malcolm Wilson. Together with New South Wales champion navigator Ray Stubbs, the 2WS Escort looks hard to beat. Jeff Portman, the current Australian rally champion and winner of last year's Dunlop 2GO, will start car 1 in his new Nissan Bluebird. The most versatile driver in the field, with 3 Australian Rally Championships, a touring car title and Bathurst win behind him, is Colin Bond in his TR7 V8. Bond's car is fitted with a 4.4-litre alloy V8 engine, developing over 300 horsepower. Everyone is confident that their car can finish Australia's fastest rally. But with champions like Greg Carr and his factory Fiat Arbath, 4 times ARC champ Ross Duncan in a Datsun Stanza, Bathurst winner Dick Johnson in his first ever rally, and local star Ian Hill, no one dared pick a winner.
We'll make it at the microphone, and at 10:30 we'll be getting the first of the cars away.
The tension shows as drivers get their head into gear for the rally ahead. Flagged away by Mike Cleary, the Minister for Sport, Leisure and Tourism, the cars leave at 2-minute intervals on a transport section to the first competitive stage in the Arimba State Forest.
Guides in the souvenir program to see the action, and the first car is away.
The Dunlop 2GO International has always tested rally teams to the limit, but with 5 Australian rally champions, 3 Bathurst winners and 2 Japanese stars, the competition for twice British champion Malcolm Wilson was the best Australian rallying had seen for years. The rally was also a real test for Greg Carr.
The imports will obviously go very well. Malcolm Wilson's definitely no slouch. But we've got a little bit of a problem that we've got to not only try and win this rally, but we've got to also get points for the Australian Championship. And a lot will depend on how certain competitors go, like Ross Duncan and a couple of others who are ahead of us on the table. So we've got to look out for them as well as trying to win this rally. But there's good competition, so we'll have to see how it goes.
A good rally driver is one who can drive fast, but a brilliant driver has the skill necessary to maneuver a car along a winding mountain road at speeds better than 200 kilometres an hour, and the determination to go harder as the race gets faster. First, through special stage 1, was Jeff Portman. Then twice British champion Malcolm Wilson. Bond was through in his TR7 V8. Doing well was Masao Kamioka in his Lancer. Victorian star Hugh Bell. Currently leading the Australian Rally Championship was Perth driver Ross Dunkerton in a Datsun Stanza. This was not to be Dunkerton's rally. Winner of the 1980 Dunlop 2GO was Wayne Bell, really flying in his Toyota. Another Perth driver, Clive Slater. Touring car star Bob Morris was having a guest drive in an Alpha Soot, running in the new Group A category for cars with minimal modifications allowed. Times at the end of Special Stage 1 showed that mad Malcolm Wilson had pulled 16 seconds off Jeff Portman to be now leading the event. But it was local star Ian Hill who caused the upset. Starting behind 22 national classified drivers, Hill and navigator Phil Bonza had put in a brilliant performance.
Yes, we had a really good run in that first section. That's the only section we've done to date, but by my navigator's reckoning, we're only 12 seconds behind Malcolm Wilson on that stage.
Which would put you second out, right?
I believe we have beat every other car that's in front of us on that stage, yes.
Portman was only 4 seconds behind Hill's BDA Escort to be right in there with his new Nissan Bluebird.
We're hoping that we won't have any silly problems that are usually associated with the first time out for a motor car. In the 2 days testing we had no problems at all, and we're quite confident that we'll be very rapid today.
The roads were slippery and muddy from a torrential downpour the day before, and claimed Ron Marks, who rolled his spectacular Renault 5 Turbo. Australia's Ford hero and Bathurst winner Dick Johnson was also out of the event when the Precinct Performance Escort broke an axle.
Well, actually we were at stage 3, heading down to the hairpin, and we got back in low gear to go up the hill, and there's a big rut there, and the thing leapt off the ground, and when it came back down it just snapped the left-hand axle. Well, at the moment we've had the diff out, and we're trying to locate an axle for it, but apparently it's some fancy thing. It must be out of a hole, probably.
The service brake, where notes are compared and mechanics work against the clock to keep their cars competitive. The word comes through that rally leader Malcolm Wilson has had a puncture.
Yes, we had us punched on Special Stage 5, 3 kilometres into the stage, and this was on the near side front wheel. We had to drive for 10 kilometres on it. We have lost a lot of time. I don't know exactly how much. And we've also had a little electrical problem on this last one.
Portman is third, quite happy in the new Nissan Bluebird, but 1981 winner Colin Bond has lost time.
We've made one mistake so far. We kept right at a fork instead of keeping left. It was just, John called it and I went the wrong way, and it just took me 30 seconds, I guess, to recover from that. But we're very happy the way the car's going, and I'm just starting to drive it properly, I feel. It's thumb down, head up, and hang on.
Still going, mate.
Japanese stars Kamioka and Hotta were surprising everyone in their Lancers to be both running in the top 12. Sunday morning, and only 51 of the original 80 starters faced the control officials. Missing were Bob Morris, whose Alpha Soot was destroyed by fire after a holed fuel tank. Victorian driver Hugh Bell rolled his Datsun at over 160 kilometres an hour. Peter Moore had blown his engine. Dunkerton was out, as were Mike Batten, Gary Burns, Jim Middleton and Carolyn O'Shaughnessy. Malcolm Wilson had stretched his lead over Ian Hill by nearly 3 minutes after putting in a brilliant performance over Wattigan Road. 27 kilometres of high-speed crests and curves that really sorts the men from the boys.
Yes, we've had quite a good run over Wattigan Road. I think we took well over a minute off Greg Carr. I think Jeff Portman's also got problems, but we took nearly 2 minutes off him. But that sort of stage really suits the Escort, and I did enjoy it very much, and up to press it's a very good event.
Portman was in trouble. The current rally champion retired his car before Sunday's division with a broken valve spring and damaged rings. Greg Carr was now third. The Fiat Abarth performing well on unsuitable tyres following his rollover in the second round of the Australian Rally Championship in Queensland only weeks before.
Well, the rollover's always on the cards. I mean, when you're going quick, you don't try and do it, but it doesn't take much to slip off the edge and tip over, but we'll certainly be trying to avoid it. But they fixed the car's absolutely perfect. They've worked like crazy on it in the last 2 or 3 weeks. rallying was in a bit of a slump for a while, and this 2GO rally really has sort of picked rallying up in Australia. They had the Frenchman last year, Jean-Louis Leroux, and this year they've got, as you know, the 3 internationals. Next year, who knows? But it certainly is a good sign for Australian rallying.
Colin Bond was up to 4th in the new TR7 V8, although it was surprising just how quick Bond's former Works Escort BDAs were running at the head of the field in the hands of Wilson and Hill.
Well, you get on the throttle control, which is nice, because I think a BDA, you just drive it flat out and steer it more or less, where these things you can actually point it in the right direction and then just feed the power in. The tyre wear, surprising, is a lot better, you know, on this than what it would be on the BDA. Yet, you know, I mean, I still love the BDA as a car, but, you know, if you haven't got a BDA, this is not a bad second choice.
The Dunlop 2GO International Rally had not only captured the attention of over 30,000 spectators, but the media as well. 3 Sydney television stations, 7, 9 and 10, had actually poured money into the event, while the Rothman Special Events Centre provided a network of radio stations right around Australia with up-to-date reports. Sunday's first competitive section, Special Stage 13, was the famous Wattigan Road, and the news that Australia's fastest rally road had claimed the Dunlop 2GO's major star.
It's like Bill at the end of the first daylight competitive Wattigan Road. Malcolm Wilson has failed to appear. He's failed to turn up, and it appears as though he's out of the event, and I'd say Ian Hill is now in the lead.
The driver, who had impressed Australian rally fans like no other international before him, was out. Ian Hill was now in the lead, but Greg Carr's Fiat was flying and claimed a string of 4 fastest times. Such was the strain on the cars that the Canberra driver's steering wheel came off in his hands, and Bond also had to tighten his steering column. Special Stage 16, and Carr was 4 seconds faster than Victoria's David Officer, after rally leader Ian Hill went off the road.
Had a few little problems this morning, but nothing too bad, and as far as I know, we're still leading the rally.
And you've just broken the lap record again around the Jillaby Autocross circuit.
Yes, I think we've fixed them all up on that one again.
The sheer speed of the rally provided brilliant spectator entertainment, but drivers had never known a faster event. Another casualty was Gordon Levin, up to 9th place when he lost all steering with a broken tie rod. All it took was hitting a hole at the wrong angle, and car 19 was out of the rally. In the past, driver and navigator would have attempted emergency repairs. The Dunlop 2GO International was so fast and competitive that the crew could never make up the 10 minutes lost. Japanese stars Kamioka and Sakuma were now in the top 10, but teammate Hotter had done a wall of death in his Lancer and had destroyed the car, making it a very sad weekend for patron Mike Bell and his bank manager. Despite the high casualty list, the pace of the rally is still spectacular. Kamioka was forced to stop with a loose throttle cable on the Curtis Yambo hairpin. It took only minutes to fix, but lost him a possible 4th place. Special stage 19. Bond shared fastest time with Ian Hill. The TR7 driver now locked into third place, but it wasn't to last.
We just pressed a rise, we went fourth gear and went back to third around the corner, started to accelerate, and nothing happened. I thought I must have missed a gear. Tried for third again. I was in third in any other gear, and there's no drive. So what must have happened, I think, is breaking the first measure shaft in the gearbox or something like that, because the car's going okay. It's just that it won't drive it anywhere.
The end of special stage 20, and local star Ian Hill has diff problems. The car is only driving on one wheel, and the rally which Hill has tried to win for the last 4 years is falling from his grasp. Greg Carr's Fiat has hit the front and stretched the lead to about 2 minutes, but again the pace was to claim another star. The Fiat's gearbox had constant mesh gear failure, and Carr was left with only fifth gear and in the middle of a transport section. 6 of the leading 10 cars have dropped out since Sunday morning. Coote, Officer and Wise were keen to get on with the action, and after 2 days of rallying, 4th to 7th places were separated by only 27 seconds.
Somebody check the back end.
Hill is still in the lead in the X-Works Escort, but with a broken diff. He's slow to start the last 3 stages, and Murray Coote is closing at 30 seconds a stage. Kamioka and Sakuma. Only bad luck robbed them of a brilliant performance. Sydney's Ed Mulligan still clowning around in Bruce Garland's Escort.
We stopped on Modigan for a minute and a half. Total time. Just finished. Just get Japanese connection home.
Gosford's Ron Kremen, now 7th. The final stage, the Gillaby Autocross Circuit, and Perth's Clive Slater claims 5th spot by only 5 seconds from 4th placed Graham Wise and John Williams in a Datsun 1600. Victorian driver, Dinter Officer and navigator Kate Hobson drive into 3rd place in their Galant, 2 minutes ahead of Wise. Ahead of Officer, by only 38 seconds, was Queensland's Murray Coote and navigator Brian Marsden. And the winner, by only 22 seconds, Ian Hill and navigator Phil Bonza in the Escort BDA. It was the Gossard Privateer's first major rally win and the Dunlop 2GO's most popular.
Just can't believe it's happening. We couldn't fix the car, so we just had to take a chance and go for it. Well, you broke the Gillaby again today. You set fastest time yesterday, and you finished the day pretty good with a big win. And I guess tonight it's all champagne, is it? I'd say so, yeah. The presentation will be a great night.
Malcolm Wilson vowed to return next year. And while most of the rally crew shared a beer, Hill broke out the champagne. The Dunlop 2GO International, undoubtedly Australia's fastest and most competitive rally, and it was won by an unsponsored privateer driver.